Hello, this is Elizabeth Yuko with the Ethics and Society podcast. I'm here with Dr. Sue Fish, who's a professor of Biostatistics and Epidemiology at the Boston University School of Public Health. Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hi, Elizabeth.
So, you're involved with a lot of things, but I know Primer is one of your main organizations. I cannot remember off the top of my head what the acronym stands for. Could you please remind me?
Sure. PRIMER stands for Public Responsibility in Medicine and Research. It's the international ethics organization that's involved with protection of both human subjects of research as well as animal subjects of research.
Great, thanks. And that is, it's a good tool for IRBs and a good organization for IRBs.
Yes.
And so I think for our purposes today, I think it would be interesting to hear what your take on an IRB's position on encouraging research would be, instead of being seen as a roadblock, how it encourages research, just, I guess, hearing the other side of the story.
Okay. Well, many investigators experience IRBs as an obstacle or a roadblock, or they think they just have to get the approval, however they have to get an IRB approval. My perspective, and the perspective of many people in the IRB world, is that IRBs have a mandate to protect human subjects, and the way to do that is to help researchers do scientifically valid and ethically sound research. And in that way, I see the IRB's role as helping researchers to do the right thing. Not that researchers are intending to not do the right thing, but rather that researchers tend to get focused on their research goals, which makes all the sense in the world. Mm-hmm. They are not expert in the regulatory requirements, and sometimes they don't necessarily see some of the ethical issues involved in their research. For that reason, a collaborative relationship between investigators and IRBs produces the best results, both scientifically and ethically, and ultimately subjects are benefited and protected.
Great. Thank you so much. So, next question is, as an IRB expert, do you have any tips for researchers for navigating IRBs? Are there any particular red flags they should look out for, any language that they should use or not use when putting together their applications?
Well, certainly anybody doing research that might be listening to this podcast is probably doing research related to HIV, substance abuse, sexual minorities of various sorts. All of those are populations, research populations that may be considered vulnerable to coercion or undue influence because of various power differentials. That said, any of that kind of research is going to raise some red flags with IRBs. If an investigator, in putting together an IRB application, can proactively identify the red flags and try as best as possible to proactively address issues around coercion, undue influence, and power differentials, privacy and confidentiality issues, additional risk issues, benefits to subjects and society from the research, and put those descriptions in the IRB application before the IRB has a chance to raise them as red flags. I would also suggest to use language that the IRB is most comfortable with, and that's really the Belmont principles: respect for persons, beneficence, justice, and then to use any of the regulatory requirements that the IRB must assess in order to approve a study. And those are the review criteria at in the common rule at 45 CFR 46.111 for those regulatory nerds who are listening. But feel free to go ahead and look that up. And then the informed consent requirements at 45 CFR 46.116. But for example, just the justice principle. If a researcher does not include a certain, quote, vulnerable population in his or her research, is that violating the justice principle of fair sharing of the burdens and the benefits of research by excluding anybody who might be intoxicated or might be an injection drug user, because that then doesn't allow those populations to be participants in the research. And if an IRB, if an investigator thinks his or her IRB is going to balk at including a certain segment of the population, not for scientific reasons, but for, quote, ethical reasons, then the investigator can say up front, well, if that subject is excluded, that's a violation of the justice principle. And that takes it right back to the Belmont principles, a language the IRB speaks, and then the IRB has a different perspective on excluding segments of a population that aren't necessarily scientifically justified to be excluded.
Great. Okay, so that really, I guess if researchers do their homework, particularly in terms of the regulations and being familiar with Belmont, then that will really work out to their benefit in the end.
I think it'll smooth the process when everyone's talking in a language that the IRB has to talk in because they're regulatorily bound to meet certain standards. Is once the investigator understands that and can talk in that language, the conversation goes more smoothly.
Great. Thank you so much, Sue. Those really helpful tips. And if you are looking for Sue, you could look up her research at Boston University School of Public Health. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Welcome.